Beneath the rolling waves, in the silence of the ocean's deepest trenches, lies a mystery that has haunted human imagination for more than 2,000 years. The sea, vast and unyielding, guards its secrets well. Sunken cities, forgotten temples, and perhaps the memory of a world wiped clean by time. Among these whispered legends, one name echoes louder than all others: Atlantis. Some say it was a paradise of shining marble, golden statues, and knowledge far beyond its age. Others dismiss it as nothing more than a philosopher's fable, a moral story cloaked in allegory. Yet, every time divers uncover submerged ruins, or explorers stumble upon maps that shouldn't exist, the question resurfaces: could Atlantis have been real? Science warns us against chasing shadows, insisting that myths are not evidence. But history is filled with tales once dismissed as fantasy, until discovery proved otherwise. Troy, once considered pure myth, was unearthed from beneath the soil. Could Atlantis be waiting in the depths, a treasure hidden beneath centuries of sand and salt water? For scholars, it's a puzzle. For dreamers, it's an obsession. And for all of us, it lingers as a story that refuses to sink. So tonight, we journey into the heart of that mystery. We'll follow the clues left by ancient texts, sift through geological anomalies, and confront the unyielding divide between accepted science and the whispers of forbidden history. Because whether Atlantis was a myth or a memory, one thing is certain: its legend has outlived empires, and it still beckons us into the deep. And it all begins with the man who first put Atlantis into words, a philosopher whose story continues to ripple through time. The story of Atlantis begins not with a sailor's tale or a weathered map, but with the words of one of history's most influential thinkers, the Greek philosopher Plato. Around 360 BCE, Plato composed two dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, and within their pages, he introduced a story so extraordinary that it has never been forgotten. To Plato, Atlantis was no minor anecdote. It was a sweeping narrative of a powerful empire that had risen to greatness and then fallen into ruin in a single catastrophic night. According to his account, Atlantis was a vast maritime kingdom situated beyond the Pillars of Heracles, the ancient term for what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. This empire, he wrote, was larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined. Its people were masters of the sea, with fleets of ships that traveled across oceans, trading and conquering. The Atlanteans were blessed with immense natural wealth, fertile soil, rare metals, and even the mythical orichalcum, a gleaming substance said to shine like fire. Plato described a capital city unlike anything the ancient world had seen. Concentric rings of land and water encircled a magnificent central island. Bridges connected each level, while towering walls, clad in red, white, and black stone, rose high above the harbor. At the heart of this dazzling metropolis stood a temple to Poseidon, adorned with statues of gold, silver, and ivory. There bulls were sacrificed in grand ritual, honoring the god said to have fathered the first kings of Atlantis. Yet for all its grandeur, Atlantis was not without flaw. Plato painted its people as ambitious, growing arrogant with their wealth and power. They sought to dominate not only their neighbors, but the known world itself. Their armies spread across Europe and Africa, challenging the might of Athens. But it was here, in the face of Athenian resistance, that Atlantis began to falter. And then, disaster struck. In a single day and night of misfortune, Plato wrote, Atlantis was swallowed by the sea and vanished forever. This destruction was not a battle, not a slow decline, but a sudden cataclysm, an event so devastating it left no trace. For scholars, this tale has long raised a burning question. Was Plato recounting a real history, passed down from Egyptian priests as he claimed, or was he crafting an allegory? Many academics argue the latter, suggesting Atlantis was a symbolic warning about hubris, greed, and the inevitable collapse of corrupt societies. To them, it was never meant to be taken literally, simply a moral tale wrapped in myth. But not everyone agrees. Alternative historians, explorers, and even scientists have pointed out that Plato's account is unusually detailed for a mere allegory. The measurements he provides, the geographic placement, the descriptions of resources and rituals, These are specifics that go far beyond the typical fabric of legend. Could Plato have been preserving an authentic memory of a civilization, long lost to time? This is why his words have endured. Unlike so many myths whose details blur with retelling, Atlantis enters history with precision, captured in the writings of a man whose influence on Western thought is immeasurable. And for over 2 millennia, those words have sparked endless debates, countless expeditions, and a fascination that shows no signs of sinking. Whether allegory or reality, Plato lit a flame that continues to burn. His vision of a glittering, advanced world, rising, thriving, and falling in spectacular ruin, remains one of the most enduring mysteries of the human story. And if Plato was not merely inventing a parable, then perhaps Atlantis was not alone. Perhaps it was one among many advanced civilizations erased by time. To explore that possibility, we must turn to the world's earliest cultures and the unexplained sophistication they left behind. If Atlantis truly existed, it would not have stood in isolation. Across the ancient world, civilizations rose, seemingly from nowhere, leaving behind achievements so sophisticated that scholars still puzzle over their origins. To many, these cultures represent humanity's natural progression, but to others, they suggest whispers of something more, echoes of a forgotten influence, perhaps even a lost world like Atlantis. Take the Minoans of Crete. Flourishing over 3,000 years ago, the Minoans built sprawling palaces at Knossos and Phaistos, adorned with elaborate frescoes and advanced plumbing systems. Their ships dominated the Mediterranean, carrying goods and ideas across seas with a mastery of navigation few would match for centuries. Yet their civilization collapsed almost overnight, likely from a volcanic eruption at Thera, an event eerily similar to Plato's tale of sudden destruction. Some argue that the Minoans, or their memory, may have fueled the legend of Atlantis. Then there are the Egyptians. Rising from the banks of the Nile, they engineered monuments so precise that even today's technology struggles to replicate them. The Great Pyramid of Giza, aligned almost perfectly to true north, has sparked endless speculation. Was it mere coincidence or evidence of astronomical knowledge beyond their time? Mainstream archaeology attributes their success to ingenuity, manpower, and centuries of experimentation. But alternative theorists see in the precision of their stonework, the hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx, and the enduring mystery of hieroglyphic knowledge, the fingerprints of something older, perhaps a legacy inherited from a vanished civilization. Farther east, the Sumerians of Mesopotamia seem to appear fully formed around 4000 BCE. They gave us writing, codified law, and complex urban planning almost overnight in historical terms. Their clay tablets describe star systems and planetary movements that modern astronomy would only confirm millennia later. Scholars argue these observations arose from keen, systematic study. Yet others ask, how could a culture so young in human history acquire such advanced awareness of the heavens so quickly? These leaps in human achievement, scattered across different lands, create a tantalizing pattern. Each of these civilizations rose swiftly, flourished magnificently, and then declined, often leaving behind mysteries that do not easily align with linear historical progress. Mainstream explanations rely on cultural exchange, trial and error, and human brilliance. But the gaps, the sudden surges of advancement, make room for speculation. Were these societies influenced by survivors of a forgotten world? Was Atlantis not only real, but also a mother culture that seeded knowledge across continents? Consider the precision of megalithic sites, stones weighing hundreds of tons, moved and set with uncanny accuracy, or metallurgy that appears advanced beyond its era, like the Damascus steel of later centuries, whose secrets are still debated. These puzzles fuel the argument that ancient peoples may have inherited techniques rather than discovered them in isolation. Even mainstream science acknowledges one unsettling truth: human history is incomplete. Archaeology is shaped by what survives, and the majority of our past has been lost to time, erosion, and catastrophe. Every new discovery, a submerged city off the coast of India, ancient roads beneath the Amazon canopy, forgotten pyramids hidden by desert sands, reshapes what we thought we knew. If these overlooked marvels exist, why not Atlantis? To skeptics, the allure of Atlantis lies in our tendency to project mystery onto the gaps of history. To believers, the very existence of those gaps is evidence enough that we've only glimpsed fragments of a much older, richer human story. And it is in the depths of the ocean, not just the deserts or mountains, that the most compelling clues may lie. For water has hidden entire landscapes, preserving the ruins of worlds we never knew existed. To search for Atlantis, we must descend into those waters and confront the geological and oceanic anomalies that continue to defy explanation. The ocean is Earth's most enduring vault, a keeper of secrets, buried beneath miles of salt water and silt. While we have charted mountains, mapped deserts, and traced the stars, more than 80% of the seafloor remains unexplored. If a civilization like Atlantis once flourished, the ocean would be the perfect hiding place for its remains. And as divers and researchers probe deeper, tantalizing anomalies have emerged, sites that defy easy explanation, challenging what we believe about the past. Off the coast of Japan, near the island of Yonaguni, lies one of the most hotly debated discoveries of the 20th century. In 1987, divers stumbled upon a massive underwater structure, a series of terraces, steps, and platforms resembling a man-made pyramid. Some geologists argue these formations are the result of natural tectonic activity and erosion. Yet to the naked eye, the right angles, clean cuts, and symmetrical design appear intentional. Could the Yonaguni monument be the remains of a city drowned thousands of years ago? Perhaps even a fragment of a civilization lost to rising seas? Thousands of miles away in India, another submerged city tells a similar story. Dwarka, long believed to be mythical, was said in ancient Hindu texts to be the kingdom of Lord Krishna. In 2002, sonar scans off the coast of modern-day Dwarka revealed extensive ruins beneath the Arabian Sea. Walls, grids, and artifacts carbon-dated to nearly 9,000 years ago. This discovery predates the earliest known urban settlements on Earth, rewriting timelines of civilization. Mainstream archaeologists caution against overinterpretation, suggesting these could be natural formations or later settlements misdated. But for those who see connections to Atlantis, Dwarka is living proof that advanced cities have indeed been swallowed by the sea. The Caribbean too whispers of lost worlds. Off the coast of Cuba, deep-sea explorations in 2001 detected what appeared to be massive stone structures on the seabed. Rectangles, pyramidal shapes, and arranged blocks stretching across several square kilometers. The depths, nearly 2,000 feet below the surface, make investigation difficult, and skeptics argue the structures may simply be unusual rock formations. Yet the possibility lingers. If verified, they could represent a city that sank over 10,000 years ago, eerily aligned with the timeline Plato gave for Atlantis' destruction. It isn't only ruins that point to mysteries beneath the waves. Maps from antiquity reveal knowledge that shouldn't have existed. The most famous of these is the Piri Reis map, created in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral. Based on older source charts, the map depicts the coastlines of South America with surprising accuracy, long before Europeans officially mapped them. Even more puzzling, it appears to show the outline of Antarctica, not as we know it under ice, but as an ice-free continent. If true, this suggests that someone in the distant past charted regions only visible before the last ice age ended around 12,000 years ago. Mainstream cartographers argue that the map is a patchwork of distorted coastlines, misinterpreted by later scholars. But alternative researchers see in it undeniable proof of ancient seafaring knowledge, perhaps drawn from records of a lost civilization with global reach. Could Atlantis, with its fleets of ships described by Plato, have been the source of such advanced charts? Skepticism is vital, and science rightly urges caution. Natural geology can mimic architecture. Dating underwater ruins is notoriously complex, and maps can be misread or romanticized. Yet anomalies like these resist dismissal because they cluster into a pattern: submerged ruins, unexplained accuracy, and sudden flashes of sophistication where none should exist. Each clue on its own may be explained away. Together, they form a haunting chorus echoing from the deep. The ocean hides more than ruins. It conceals entire landscapes. At the end of the last ice age, melting glaciers raised sea levels by over 400 feet, drowning vast stretches of coastal plains. Millions of square miles of habitable land now lie underwater, untouched and unexplored. Imagine what those submerged valleys, deltas, and cities might still hold. Artifacts of forgotten cultures waiting for discovery. If Atlantis truly existed, science itself acknowledges that the ocean is exactly where its remains would lie. The sea, then, is not only a barrier but also a mirror, reflecting humanity's fear of what we have lost and our hope of what might still be found. And across cultures, stories of great floods and drowned kingdoms endure, as though entire civilizations once carried the same memory of destruction. To understand Atlantis fully, we must turn to those myths of deluge that have persisted for thousands of years, across continents and cultures, separated by oceans and centuries. One story resurfaces again and again, the story of a great flood. From the Middle East to the Americas, from the icy north to the islands of the Pacific, humanity's oldest tales often speak of rising waters, drowned lands, and survivors who struggled to rebuild in the aftermath. The striking similarity of these accounts has long stirred debate. Are these myths coincidental allegories, or do they preserve a shared memory of a global catastrophe? The most famous version comes from the Bible, Noah's Ark. According to the book of Genesis, humankind had become corrupt, and so the heavens opened, releasing 40 days of relentless rain. Only Noah, his family, and the animals aboard his great vessel survived. For many, it is a religious story of divine judgment. Yet the flood motif predates the Bible by centuries, appearing in Mesopotamian texts like the Epic of Gilgamesh. There, a hero named Utanapishtim survives a deluge sent by angry gods, preserving life aboard a massive boat. The parallels between these two narratives are unmistakable. Travel farther, and similar tales emerge. In Hindu tradition, the god Vishnu warns Manu of a coming flood, instructing him to build a great vessel and save the seeds of life. In Greek myth, Deucalion and Pyrrha survive a divine flood unleashed by Zeus to cleanse humanity. Native American tribes, from the Hopi of the Southwest to the Ojibwe of the Great Lakes, also recount legends of rising waters that force their ancestors to seek refuge on high ground or in floating canoes. Even in the Pacific Islands, oral traditions describe deluges that reshape the land, washing away villages and entire generations. What is remarkable is not simply that these stories exist, but that they echo one another in detail. Warnings from divine beings or wise elders, the construction of vessels, the preservation of life, and the rebirth of civilization after the waters recede. For skeptics, the flood motif is universal because water is universal. Every community has known floods, and so they invented myths to explain them. But for others, these shared narratives point to something deeper, a collective cultural memory of a cataclysm so massive that it scarred the human psyche across continents. Science provides its own evidence of such cataclysms. At the end of the last ice age, roughly 12,000 years ago, glaciers melted at an astonishing rate, raising global sea levels by more than 400 feet. Coastlines vanished, fertile plains drowned, and entire habitats were swallowed. Modern geological studies confirm that this was not a gradual trickle, but punctuated by violent surges, events like the sudden draining of glacial lakes that unleash torrents of water across continents. One of the most dramatic theories is the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. It suggests that a comet or asteroid struck Earth around 10,800 BCE, triggering wildfires, abrupt climate shifts, and massive flooding. While controversial, the hypothesis aligns eerily with timelines found in ancient myths, stories of destruction and renewal that seem to remember a sudden break in human history. Here lies the tantalizing connection to Atlantis. Plato's account places the destruction of Atlantis at roughly the same period, describing how an advanced civilization was swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. Could it be that the flood myths of the world and the story of Atlantis are fragments of the same event, remembered differently by different peoples? Mainstream historians caution restraint, reminding us that oral traditions evolve and exaggerate. Flood myths may not recall a single catastrophe, but rather countless local disasters woven into archetypal tales. Yet even they acknowledge the undeniable truth. Sea levels did rise, and ancient shorelines, where early civilizations likely thrived, are now lost beneath the waves. And so the question lingers. Were these myths allegories, or were they testimonies of survivors, passing down their memories through story and song? If entire cities like Dwarka could be found beneath the sea, might Atlantis have been another victim of the waters that reshaped our planet? The flood myths invite us to consider not only what humanity has lost, but also what knowledge may still lie hidden. For if ancient peoples survived one global cataclysm, perhaps they preserved fragments of a wisdom now forgotten, secrets that resurface when we examine their technology, their monuments, and their mysterious grasp of science far ahead of their time. When we think of ancient civilizations, we often imagine crude tools, primitive huts, and the slow march of progress. Yet scattered across the archaeological record are anomalies that refuse to fit this narrative. Objects, monuments, and alignments that hint at technologies we should not expect from societies thousands of years old. To some, they are curiosities explained away by coincidence or ingenuity. To others, they are breadcrumbs leading back to a forgotten source of knowledge. Could these be echoes of Atlantis, a civilization said to possess advancements beyond its age? One of the most famous examples is the so-called Baghdad Battery. Discovered in Iraq, this small clay jar contains a copper cylinder and an iron rod. When filled with acidic liquid, the device can produce an electrical charge. While mainstream scholars argue it was likely used for simple electroplating or even just storage, its existence raises unsettling questions. If electricity was understood 2,000 years before Benjamin Franklin's kite experiment, what other knowledge might have been lost? Then there are the megaliths, stones weighing hundreds of tons, carved and placed with a precision that baffles modern engineers. In places like Baalbek in Lebanon, blocks the size of buses were quarried, moved, and set into foundations without the use of cranes or modern machinery. At Pumapunku in Bolivia, massive andesite blocks were cut with such accuracy that their interlocking joints resemble the work of machine tools. Mainstream explanations point to human persistence, ingenuity, and simple tools combined with clever engineering. Yet fringe theorists ask, why does the precision resemble modern machining? And why do we find similar patterns across continents, separated by oceans? Astronomy, too, adds to the puzzle. Ancient sites like Stonehenge, the pyramids of Giza, and the temples of Teotihuacan in Mexico are aligned with remarkable accuracy to solstices, equinoxes, and even specific stars. The Great Pyramid's shafts point directly to Orion's belt and Sirius, while the Mayan observatories tracked Venus with uncanny precision. Skeptics argue that with enough structures, some alignments are inevitable. But the sheer consistency across cultures suggests a deep, deliberate knowledge of the heavens. Could ancient peoples have inherited astronomical wisdom from a more advanced civilization now lost? These anomalies invite speculation, but they also highlight a deeper pattern. Knowledge appears, shines brightly, and then disappears, only to be rediscovered millennia later. Electricity, advanced stonework, and complex astronomy are all achievements we associate with modern science, yet their shadows stretch deep into antiquity. If Atlantis truly existed as Plato described, a hub of wealth, technology, and seafaring power, then perhaps these scattered marvels are remnants of its legacy, preserved in fragments by cultures that survived its fall. Of course, academia pushes back. Archaeologists caution against romanticizing anomalies, reminding us that humans are ingenious problem solvers. With enough labor, trial, and error, remarkable feats are possible. They warn that invoking lost civilizations is a shortcut that robs ancient peoples of their achievements. But the mysteries remain. If human innovation explains every anomaly, why do so many ancient technologies still baffle us today? Why do entire techniques, such as Roman concrete or Damascus steel, vanish for centuries, only to be reverse-engineered in modern labs? It is here, in the tension between science and speculation, that Atlantis lives. The city Plato described was not merely rich, but advanced, a society whose knowledge surpassed its time. If it perished, its secrets may have scattered like seeds, germinating in Egypt, Mesopotamia, Mesoamerica, and beyond. We are left to wonder, are we rediscovering truths that were once common knowledge, erased by catastrophe, and remembered only in myth? And so the question lingers, did Atlantis preserve technologies and sciences that we now mistake as miraculous outliers of ancient ingenuity? Or are we merely projecting our own fascination with progress onto the relics of the past? The search for answers leads us to the present day, where modern explorers and theorists continue to hunt for Atlantis, not just in artifacts, but in geography itself. And as we turn to the question of where Atlantis might have been, the debate grows sharper, the theories wilder, and the mystery deeper still. For centuries, the mystery of Atlantis has inspired explorers, scholars, and dreamers to search for its resting place. If Plato's words hold even a fragment of truth, then somewhere on this planet lie the remains of a lost civilization. But where? Over time, theories have multiplied, each offering tantalizing evidence, and each raising more questions than it answers. One of the most popular candidates is the volcanic island of Santorini, once home to the flourishing Minoan civilization. Around 1600 BCE, the island of Thera erupted with a force so violent it devastated the surrounding region, collapsing much of the island into the sea. The timing aligns loosely with Plato's tale of a mighty civilization struck down in a single day and night. The Minoans were a seafaring power, their palaces rich with art and technology. Could their sudden destruction have inspired the legend of Atlantis? Skeptics counter that Plato's account predates the eruption by nearly 1,000 years, suggesting the Minoans could only be a parallel, not the original source. Farther west, the Azores, an isolated archipelago in the Atlantic Ocean, have also been cast as contenders, lying just beyond the Strait of Gibraltar. They sit precisely where Plato claimed Atlantis once thrived, beyond the Pillars of Heracles. Some explorers believe the Azores are the last visible peaks of a drowned continent. Sonar scans of the ocean floor have revealed what appear to be rectilinear formations and submerged ridges. Yet scientists argue that the Azores are volcanic in origin, shaped by shifting tectonic plates, not by human hands. Still, the islands remain a magnet for those who believe Atlantis lingers just below the waves. Perhaps the most visually compelling theory lies not beneath the sea, but in the vast Sahara Desert. There, in Mauritania, a massive circular formation known as the Richat structure, or the Eye of the Sahara, spans nearly 25 miles across. Its concentric rings of stone mirror Plato's description of Atlantis's capital, alternating circles of land and water encircling a central island. Aerial photographs have only fueled speculation, as the resemblance is uncanny. Proponents argue that shifting coastlines and desertification could have erased any traces of waterways that once flowed there. Critics, however, point out that the Richat is a geological dome, not man-made, and bears no evidence of ancient habitation. Still, the Eye remains one of the most captivating candidates, an enigma staring skyward from the sands. And then there is Antarctica, perhaps the most audacious theory of all. Some claim that beneath its vast ice sheets lies the true Atlantis, a continent once ice-free and habitable. The Piri-Reis map, with its puzzling depiction of an Antarctica coastline without ice, is often cited as evidence. Geological studies show that Antarctica was not always frozen, raising the possibility that it once hosted life. Yet mainstream science warns that Antarctica froze over millions of years before humans walked the Earth. To believe Atlantis lies there requires stretching timelines far beyond accepted history. But for those drawn to forbidden knowledge, the allure of an advanced civilization buried beneath miles of ice remains irresistible. Each theory fits a piece of Plato's puzzle, yet none completes it. Santorini explains sudden destruction, but not the precise geography. The Azores match the location, but lack definitive ruins. The Sahara's eye mirrors the description, but not the timeline. Antarctica tempts with grandeur, but clashes with geology. Every solution births new mystery, leaving Atlantis forever just out of reach. And so the search continues. Adventurers risk storms in the Atlantic, divers plunge into forbidden depths, and satellites scan deserts and ice sheets, all in pursuit of a city that may or may not exist. Atlantis endures, not because we have found it, but because every theory leaves us suspended between doubt and hope, between science and myth. But beyond maps and ruins lies a deeper truth. Atlantis is not only a place on Earth, but a place in the human mind. Its legend reveals as much about us as it does about history. To understand why this mystery refuses to die, we must explore the psychology of obsession, and why we keep chasing a world that may have never been. Why does Atlantis continue to hold us in its grip? Unlike other myths that fade into obscurity, Atlantis remains alive, reshaped, reimagined, and reborn with each generation. Perhaps the answer lies not in geography or archaeology, but in the human mind itself. Atlantis is less a city and more a mirror, reflecting our deepest hopes, fears, and questions about who we are. At its core, the myth offers the dream of a golden age. Plato's Atlantis was a land of abundance, fertile soil, glittering metals, and unrivaled knowledge. To a world plagued by war and scarcity, the idea of a perfect civilization speaks to our longing for harmony, wealth, and wisdom. Atlantis represents the world as we wish it could be. Advanced, yet beautiful. Powerful, yet serene. Every culture harbors such visions, whether it be the Garden of Eden, Shambhala, or El Dorado. Atlantis is simply the Western world's version of Paradise Lost. But entwined with this dream is a darker thread, the fear of destruction. Atlantis was not merely a utopia. It was a warning. Its people grew arrogant, corrupted by greed and ambition, until nature, or the gods, wiped them away in a single night. This duality is what makes the story so powerful. It offers both inspiration and caution. Rise too high, and the sea will claim you. In a world that has faced plagues, wars, and the looming threat of climate catastrophe, the tale feels eerily timeless. The myth also appeals to our thirst for forbidden knowledge. What if Atlantis held technologies we have yet to rediscover? Energy sources, navigation skills, or sciences that could revolutionize our future. The idea that a lost civilization may have once surpassed us ignites both curiosity and humility. It suggests that human progress is not a straight line but a cycle, where knowledge can be gained, lost, and perhaps regained. Different cultures have adapted the myth to reflect their own anxieties. In the 19th century, during Europe's age of exploration, Atlantis became a symbol of undiscovered lands across the sea. In the 20th century, with the rise of science fiction, it morphed into a vision of ancient astronauts and advanced technologies. Today, in an age of climate change and rising seas, Atlantis feels like a haunting prophecy, a reminder that nature can erase even the mightiest of civilizations. What endures is not whether Atlantis was real, but what it represents, the eternal human search for meaning. We yearn for proof that greatness is possible, that our species has touched heights beyond imagination. At the same time, we fear the fragility of our world, the possibility that all we've built could vanish overnight. Atlantis embodies both, the dream of what we could be and the nightmare of what we could lose. Perhaps this is why Atlantis still calls to us from beneath the waves. It is not just a lost city. It is a story we tell ourselves about hope, hubris, and the cycles of history. Whether or not we ever find its ruins, Atlantis already exists, etched into the human psyche, an unsinkable legend that will never drown. And yet, the obsession is not merely personal. It fuels ongoing debates, even battles, between mainstream science and alternative seekers. To see how far this legend divides and unites us, we must step into the arena where fact and speculation collide. Atlantis lives in a battlefield of ideas, where the voices of orthodox science clash with the passion of explorers and alternative thinkers. To academics, the legend is clear. Plato invented a parable to illustrate the dangers of hubris and corruption. The dialogues, they argue, were never meant to be historical accounts. Archaeologists emphasize that no definitive artifacts, inscriptions, or ruins have ever been linked to Atlantis. Without hard evidence, they insist the city belongs to the realm of myth, not history. Science leans on tools like carbon dating, stratigraphy, and peer-reviewed research. These methods offer consistency, grounding history in testable facts. Geologists explain that features like Yonaguni's terraces are natural formations, sculpted by millennia of tectonic activity and erosion. Linguists argue that the mysteries of ancient maps, like the Piri-Reis chart, are products of misinterpretation rather than proof of global exploration. For the Academy, Atlantis is pseudoscience, a distraction from genuine discoveries. But outside university halls, a different narrative thrives. Divers and independent researchers return from the depths with stories of squared blocks, walls, and patterns too deliberate to be chance. Explorers point to submerged ruins in Dwarka, the Eye of the Sahara, and the Caribbean seabed, arguing that coincidences pile up until they no longer feel like coincidence at all. Fringe archaeologists highlight the precision of megaliths, the unexplained astronomical alignments, and the uncanny parallels in flood myths as a body of circumstantial evidence too large to ignore. Here, the debate becomes less about evidence and more about interpretation. Where science sees erosion, others see architecture. Where skeptics see allegory, believers see memory. This tension sustains the mystery, allowing Atlantis to straddle the line between fact and speculation. What makes the confrontation especially compelling is that both sides have their vulnerabilities. Science, for all its rigor, admits gaps in the record. Vast regions of the ocean remain unexplored, entire coastlines lost to rising seas. Alternative researchers, for their part, often lack verifiable proof, relying instead on patterns, legends, and suggestive anomalies. Both camps circle the same enigma from opposite directions, unable to fully close the case. And so Atlantis endures, not only as a legend, but as a symbol of the limits of knowledge. To skeptics, it is a reminder of how myths can mislead. To believers, it is a beacon, urging us to look deeper. Between the two lies a fertile ground of uncertainty, a space where imagination thrives, and where mystery refuses to be silenced. But if evidence remains elusive and debate endless, what then can we conclude about Atlantis? To find closure, we must leave the clash of theories behind and return to the timeless question that began it all. Was Atlantis myth, memory, or something in between? The sea is both a grave and a cradle. It buries worlds, swallowing entire landscapes beneath its restless tides. Yet it also cradles the very origins of life itself. As we return to the ocean depths, the silent, uncharted expanse where light fades and mystery reigns, we are reminded that Atlantis, whether real or imagined, lives precisely in that tension between what is lost and what might yet be found. If Atlantis were nothing more than myth, why do flood stories echo so consistently across cultures thousands of miles apart? Why do we find submerged ruins in India, Japan, and the Caribbean? Reminders that cities can and do sink into the sea. And why does Plato's account still feel so detailed, so deliberate, as though he were preserving not just an allegory, but a memory? If, on the other hand, Atlantis was real, then what truths remain hidden beneath the waves? Could it have preserved sciences we are only now rediscovering? Could it explain the sudden leaps in architecture, astronomy, and technology across ancient cultures? Or does it remind us, more simply, that human civilization is far older, far more fragile, and far more cyclical than we like to believe? The unanswered questions are what keep Atlantis alive. Its ruins have never been found, yet explorers continue to search. Its existence has never been proven, yet the legend refuses to drown. In this persistence lies its power. Atlantis is not only a mystery of history, but also a mystery of ourselves. It embodies our longing for a golden age, our fear of catastrophe, and our insatiable hunger to uncover what lies just beyond reach. Science may demand evidence, and rightly so. But imagination demands stories, and Atlantis is one of humanity's most enduring. It reminds us that history is not a closed book. It is a manuscript with missing pages, half erased and waiting for rediscovery. Whether we stand on desert sands staring at the eye of the Sahara, dive into Yonaguni's shadowy terraces, or scan the ice sheets of Antarctica, we are driven by the same force that compelled Plato to write, the need to seek. And so we stand, gazing out over the endless horizon, caught between skepticism and wonder. Perhaps Atlantis never existed, and yet perhaps it exists everywhere. In every myth, in every unexplained ruin, in every unanswered question about our past. It is both a place and an idea, both a warning and a promise. The final revelation, then, is not whether Atlantis was real, but what it represents. It is the eternal invitation to look deeper, to question the stories we inherit, and to embrace the mysteries that shape us. For in the end, Atlantis is not just beneath the sea, it is within us, woven into the tides of memory and imagination. So the next time you hear the crash of waves or look upon the endless ocean, ask yourself, what sleeps beneath? A fable or a forgotten empire? The sea will not answer, but it will keep whispering, and those whispers will continue to draw us back again and again to the greatest unsolved mystery of all.